Welcome to Becoming Limitless. This is the podcast for entrepreneurs who want to optimize their brain and their body with biohacking. I'm going to teach you how to eliminate brain fog and upgrade your health so you can have more productivity, energy, and growth in your business. I'm your host, Tanessa Shears. Let's jump in. Welcome back to the Becoming Limitless podcast. How's your week going? I hope that you've been having a great week so far and that, everything has been feeling really efficient and you've been having all the energy you need. We are in the middle of a move right now, so it is definitely on my mind is how to keep my energy up and how to keep my stress down as we pretty much pack up our entire house and move. So at the time of the recording, we have about 2.5 weeks to go until move date. So by the time this is released, it'll be about a week left. And this process has brought a lot of awareness to my body and really needing to take care of myself during this stressful time so that I can keep performing at my business and not let it affect my energy. So speaking of that, this week's episode is about the quantified self, and you might not have heard of this kind of concept before. The quantified self is basically tracking what we are doing with our health. And I first started learning about all of this when I was pregnant because I had this idea when I was pregnant. You might have heard this story before that I was going to be the fittest pregnant woman ever. So I marched into Sport Check and I got myself a Fitbit and I was so excited because I was going to take all of the steps and make sure that pregnancy didn't slow me down. But little did I know I would end up with extreme joint pain in my hips just because my ligaments got so lax. So that plan didn't go so well. But what I learned from having a Fitbit was like, oh my gosh, the data. And learning about my sleep, and I've talked about this before, but one of the most fascinating things I learned about my sleep was that the time you spent with your eyes closed and the actual time of sleep you get are totally different. And I talk about this, I think mostly on episode 2 of this podcast. But I was like, this is insane. There is so much you don't know about what's going on in your brain as you sleep and your energy levels. And tracking just became something that became so fundamental to my health journey that I've never looked back. And, most people just get, Apple Watches and Fitbits and stuff like that. And they wear them. And at the end of the day, they look at the data, like the steps they took that day. And they're like, oh, that's nice. And they go to sleep and they wake up the next day and they do it again. And they never actually use that data for anything other than just plain old information. So my goal in today's episode is to teach you not only what data is important, but what to do with that data and how to tell if the health hacks you're doing are actually worth your time, like how to analyze that data and what it all means. Because this comes back to how I do biohacking. And we know biohacking is all about, altering the external and internal environments in our bodies and around us so that we can have more longevity and well-being and energy and health and all of that kind of stuff. And the way I do biohacking is by measuring what we are doing and tracking the results. And here it is like, I don't think that tracking and biohacking have to go hand in hand because you can absolutely get out in the sun and move your body and eat good foods without tracking it and see amazing health benefits. But I do it to be efficient. And as entrepreneurs, we know we don't have a ton of time, so I need to make sure that I am doing my best to get all of the health habits that I need done and the ones that are going to be the most effective. So when I did a quick Google and looked up exactly what the quantified self means on Wikipedia this morning, here's what it said. The quantified self refers both to the cultural phenomenon of self-tracking with technology and to a community of users and makers of self-tracking tools who share an interest in self-knowledge through numbers. I mean, this is what I do with my clients. I interpret their data, whether they're wearing Fitbits or Oura Rings or whatever it is. I interpret that data and we make decisions based on it. And this is all basically, a sample size study of one. But this is also how we make our health really personalized to us because so many health recommendations and habits we read about in magazines and books are very general, but they don't take you into account and actually how it affects your data. And like I said, this is what makes my practice of what I do with my clients so much different than regular health habits. I find it so important to measure because I don't want to waste my time or my clients' time. If something is not creating the results, I don't want you to spend other time that you could be with your family or working on your business or heck, even reading a good book, doing all of these extra hours in the gym or eating all these special foods if they're not actually going to make a difference. As entrepreneurs, we are looking to get the edge in our health and our brain performance, like the exact same way we do in our business. So I want you to think about this. If you were marketing in your business with a certain strategy, whether it was Facebook ads or posting on social media or doing guest podcasting or whatever it is, and it was not getting you a return and it was not making you money, would you keep doing it? And the answer should be no. I mean, if we're wanting to have profitable businesses that reach a lot of people and have impact, if something isn't working, it's not a good use of your time. And the other way I really like to think of our brains is like, as much as our brain is like a computer, we are not a computer, meaning we don't have these built-in status reports of how we are doing. Like our brain, when we wake up, we don't go like, yep, you got enough sleep, your energy is good, but you should take it easy today because you had a really hard workout yesterday. So what we do is we default to just guessing at what is going on with our health and inside of our body. So in my opinion, and I'll say it again and again, the best investment you can make in your business is actually in your brain. So you stop guessing. The best investment you can make at all is your energy, because without that and without your health, nothing else matters. If you are sick, your business will not matter. If you are struggling to get out of bed in the morning, the success of your business isn't as enjoyable. So this is something I really want you to think of. And the other example that I also really love is think of it like this. Let's pretend you had no access to your bank accounts or knowing what was going on in them. All you had was a credit card. Now, you wouldn't go spending money on your credit card all year long without checking your online bank, would you? Like you wouldn't know, do I have enough money to buy this? Or do I have lots of money? Or, do I need to save more before I go out and purchase this? Like you wouldn't spend money on a credit card without checking your bank. So why do we do that with our brain? Why do we go and spend energy and do all these workouts and everything like that if we don't actually know what's going on in our body? So I'm going to be teaching you how I use the scientific process that we learned in like grade 9 science to really start analyzing and making decisions based on the data you see so that you can get your results. So step number 1, when you get a tracking device, it doesn't matter what device it is, you need to wear it and get a baseline and start collecting data. I like to collect the baseline data, if possible. I know sometimes we just like to jump in and start changing everything right away. Like you get so excited that you're just like, yeah, I'm going to work out and eat well, I'll start sleeping and all of that. But I do like to collect a baseline of data if possible so that I know what I'm comparing against. So for example, if you start going to bed an hour earlier, I like to be able to compare what's going on with our sleep to the time when you weren't sleeping as much. So I can see, was that as effective as the amount of time it took you to add that extra hour onto your sleep? And I usually like to see data for about 1 to 2 weeks because then we can start getting some good averages in there. We can see how long on average you're spending asleep, how long on average you spend dreaming each night, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I like to, like I said, look at things like our activity and the quality of our sleep and the duration, and we collect all of this data. Then we go to step 2. Step 2 is questioning. We want to question if what we are doing right now is working, meaning because I'm going to bed at 11:30 and waking up at 6, how is my energy? Is this working? Do I feel my best? What change could I make that would make me feel better? So based on science, I then make a hypothesis that something will work. So for example, all right, if I this week eliminate blue light that comes from our screens and our devices 60 minutes before bed consistently, what will happen to my data? So let's say that that's the example we're going to use, and we're just testing that one thing. The next thing is to implement it and test it out. Now, we need to know when we're implementing things, you need to be consistent, meaning if you're going to do 3 workouts a week, you need to do your 3 workouts a week. If you're going to do 60 minutes of blue light before bed elimination, do it every night. If you're spotty with it, you're going to have spotty results, and then it's really hard to make decisions on if it's actually effective or not. The next step you're going to do is observe. We are going to make one change to your health per week. We're not in a rush. I know we want to get there faster because we think that life is going to be so much better if I could just, have more energy or be more productive. But I really want you to take the time and find out if what you are doing is working. We're not in a rush. That's why with my clients, I don't have them exercise and sleep and start a new diet all on week 1. It takes like a 3-month process to integrate all of those things. But I also find that my clients, the stuff that I teach them sticks because I teach them how to do things sequentially and build it into their lifestyle instead of going on these crazy health fads, falling off, and then repeating the cycle for the rest of their life. So we aren't in a rush. When you're making your one change, I want you to hold everything else, meaning you're not changing 6 things. It's one thing, everything else stays the same. If you make too many changes, it is very hard to see what is working. The bonus, like I said, is it slows you down. Our brains are always going so fast. Let's let one thing be easy. Let's let our health be easy. And when I'm observing, occasionally if I know things are likely an issue, we can pull out several things at once and try adding them back in. For example, most people do not do well on processed foods, and that means flour and sugar. So I generally will pull those out together, and then we can always try adding one back in at a time. But for the most part, to keep it simple, one thing. The next step, you need to decide, did my experiment work or not? So I am looking for improvement in 2 things. I'm looking for improvement in the objective data, so the amount of deep sleep my Fitbit reports or my Oura Ring reports, or the average amount of time I spent asleep at night. Like, are these things improving since I made this change? And then there's also subjective data. So things like how you're feeling waking up, how focused you are during the day. Does your energy stay sustainable throughout the day? These are all things that you can track. And then after you decide, did this work or not, you make a conclusion. Is this worth continuing? Did it yield the results I want? Or if it didn't, do I need to test it longer? Because an example of that is, how I talk about circadian rhythm and needing to go to sleep and wake up at the same time approximately so that your body can get into a routine, optimize your hormones and your body temperature and your blood pressure and your heart rate, and use those to have high quality sleep. I find on average, I expect that it takes about 3 weeks, and this has been consistent client to client, for about 3 weeks for you to really lean into that rhythm and start seeing the benefits of it. So if you didn't see it in 1 week or 2 weeks, it doesn't mean it didn't work. You just might need to test longer. Now, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about all the different trackers on the market. There are plenty of different products available on the market for you to try. For example, there are Fitbits, there are Garmin watches, there are Apple watches, there are Oura rings, there are Whoop straps. My gosh, it goes on and on. So you can research and make the right choice for you, but I'm going to tell you through my experience, the 2 types of trackers that I have used myself and in my practice with my clients. And I will link to them in the description so you can check them out and see if they're a good fit for you. But with my client, I use the Fitbit Inspire heart rate, and it's important that you get the heart rate run because that's what gives you your sleep data. And I also use the Oura ring. So I'm currently, I used to always use the Fitbit with my clients, but I'm currently phasing it out because it doesn't give me nearly as much detailed data. So all new clients I'm coming with, they're all getting an Oura ring because the data is just insane. So I do want to speak to the accuracy of these devices because some people say, I've read so much that says they're not accurate and that there's no point because they don't really, work. And I will say, even just looking and comparing my Oura ring, which basically it's what it sounds like. It is a ring that measures all of the similar things that the wrist watches like the Fitbit does, except way more data. So when I compare, for example, my deep sleep from device to device, there are absolutely discrepancies. There are discrepancies in awake time. There are discrepancies in amount of REM sleep I get. And this is to be expected because there are, they're different devices. They have different algorithms. They look for different things. So regardless of what device you get, here is how I like to be objective. If my device says I am getting 20% of my night spent in REM sleep dreaming, I want to look for a relative improvement of 2%. If that was my goal, let's say, I wanted to, have 2% more REM sleep per night. So what I am not looking at is, am I going from 20 to 22%, but I'm looking at, can I add 2% relatively? So even if that data is not accurate, what I am doing is I'm saying, okay, if you take the numbers out of it, can I have a 2% increase? If that makes sense. Like I've even seen deviations, for example, in the number of steps that my Fitbit calculates versus my Ring. So what I always do is I just look at the average on that one device and I try to improve it on that one device instead of comparing back and forth and worrying about inaccuracies. I just say that this sensitivity of this device is what I'm going to go off of, and I'm going to make relative improvements without spending too much time getting lost in the numbers. So it was actually interesting. I did a free training a couple weeks ago called the Brain Performance Blueprint. And one of the questions that came up after our discussion was actually, it was interesting. It was about the privacy of these devices and having these corporations know my data. And while I believe that is a valid concern, I personally am not worried about it. And here is why. I can't tell you how many times I've been on a client call and we've been talking about something, for example, like the purple pillow, which I talked about all in that episode on biohacking your pillow. And I'll be talking about, for example, that with a client. And then I'll go on Instagram later and all I will see are ads for the purple pillow. So this tells me that either my computer or my phone or something is picking up my audio and storing it and using it to target me with ads. So when we look at how much our tech is being infiltrated and that data is being used, the way I look at it is it kind of feels very out of our control. So if a company, really wants to get a hold of what my resting heart rate was last night or how many steps I took during the day, that is not something that really concerns me. But if it is something that does concern you, I think, it's something you want to take into account and find if there is a less connected way to monitor all this stuff. So for example, you can get just a regular pedometer, which is a fancy word for a step counter that you put onto your waistband of your pants and it counts your steps. It doesn't connect to an app or anything so that you can just get your data. And those are all things you can do. But I just wanted to make sure I address that because it obviously is something that can be a concern. Now, there are, with biohacking, a ton of ways to track your data. Oh my gosh, so many. So you can do tests with your doctors. You can test your blood sugar or your glucose levels. You can do gut health testing. You can do food sensitivity testing. You could do hormone testing. You can test your DNA. There are so many things you can do. So for the purpose of this episode and the Quantified Self, I'm just going to be talking about the wearable trackers that we can integrate to give us that next step forward. So I'm going to talk about the two that I have used before, and I'm going to tell you about why I like one more than the other and what you can learn and how you can take this data and make decisions on your own health. So like I said, I have been using that really basic Fitbit Inspire heart rate for the longest time. Most of these type of wristwatches, whether it's Apple or Garmin or any of these on the market, they are called activity trackers for a reason because they measure your activity. So examples of things that these watches might measure include your steps, if you did exercise that day, how many calories you burned, the distance you traveled, how many minutes you spent, active, or, what zone of your heart rate you reached during your workout. You can get things like your average sleeping heart rate, how much time you spent asleep or awake or in deep sleep or dreaming. You can get a sleep score. Like I said, they give you a lot of data. And if you're not, in the realm of tracking yet, this is a beautiful, cost-efficient place to start. These also go on sale all the time, these Fitbits. I know if you can purchase them in Canada, they are usually like $120 Canadian. They go down to $90. So they go on sale all the time. They do on Amazon.com as well. So keep your eye open for that and you can save on those for sure. But what I really like about Fitbit is that the interface is really simple. It gives you very rudimentary sleep data. So just the basics you need to get started. And begin really making changes that matter. So if you were following along with the Project Sleep that I did on Instagram a couple years ago, where I live tracked all of my sleep data in the form of spreadsheets and what changes I made to my sleep or my night routine that made the biggest difference, I did that all with a Fitbit, and it was perfect. I had such great changes just by using my Fitbit. So don't feel like you need to have something fancier just because it gives you more data. Learn how to analyze the basic data first. But my favorite tool is actually the Oura Ring. So this is a ring that tracks all of the same data and a whole bunch more. Now, Oura does make the argument that their ring is more sensitive to your data and more accurate because if you think about the skin on your finger, it is thinner. So it is apparently more accurate at reading things like heart rate and like all of those things through your finger than something would be on your wrist. Now, I don't actually know how valid this is or if this has been proven in like actual scientific studies or if this is just, their reasoning behind it. But one thing I want to mention with the Oura Ring is it is not an activity tracker. In fact, I think the workout features on Oura are actually lacking. You have to really make a separate effort to add your workouts in, and then if you forget, you can't go back and add them, and I find that very frustrating. And I've actually found a third-party app that will sync my Fitbit and my Oura Ring together on my Android called Health Sync, and it's really complicated. It allows my Fitbit to talk to an app called Google Fit by syncing it with Health Sync, and then Google goes to Oura. I mean, it's really complicated, and they made it way too difficult to keep your activity level. So that is the only thing. But that is also why I want to say that Oura, I don't use it as an activity tracker. I use it as a recovery tracker. And this recovery is a much better indicator of how your body is responding to the changes in your health that you are making. So in addition to all of that data that Fitbit gives you, Oura gives you how efficient your sleep is. It tells you how restful it was. It tells you about your sleep latency. Sleep latency basically means how long it takes you to fall asleep after you close your eyes. And this is so important because sleep latency is something we look at to tell how either if you're overtired or if your brain is way too wired before bed, because on average, it should take us between 5 and 15, maximum 20 minutes to fall asleep when we go to bed. If it is taking us 30, 35 minutes, we have way too much on our mind and we need to really work on de-stressing. But if we're also falling asleep in 2 minutes, we are way too tired and we need to address that as well. Another thing that Oura tracks is movement. So when I wake up in the morning, the app actually gives me a little visual of how many times either I rolled over or had a big movement or a small movement. What this graph is so helpful for in understanding your movement is, are you tossing and turning during the night? So if I see one of those movement graphs and it has a lot of little white ticks and even some big ones on it that are indicating movement, that might say to me, I need a new pillow. If I am not comfortable during the night, or if my arm is going numb or my neck is cramped, and I'm tossing and turning trying to find a comfortable position, this is a brilliant visual for me to be like, oh, I'm going to get a new pillow, or maybe I need a body pillow, or something is going on that's keeping me tossing and turning at night. So like I said, these are all great pieces of data to have. The other really neat piece of data that Oura gives out that is very unique and that I love is not only does it show my minimum resting heart rate during the night, but it gives me a detailed graph showing the pattern of my resting heart rate as night. So for example, let's say, you go to sleep. In an ideal world, your heart rate drops as you dip into sleep and starts rising as you are about to wake up. So this is one of the 3 general sleeping heart rate patterns that I look at when we're indicating, what is disrupting your sleep. So there's the one that I just told you about. So if you picture your heart rate on a graph, you go to sleep and it slowly drops. And as the morning comes, it slowly rises. You can picture that kind of looking like a banana, right? That typically indicates a well-rested, well-recovered client. So these are wonderful things to look at. The second general sleeping heart rate pattern would be if you go to sleep and your heart rate forms a very steep downward slope throughout the night. This means your metabolism is working overtime. This might tell me either you had alcohol in the evening that was disrupting your sleep, maybe you had a late workout, or maybe you ate too much too close to bed. If your metabolism is working overtime, what that might indicate is that your body needs blood to digest your food, or maybe your heart rate is still pumping from a workout. And what this means is that it takes your body longer for your heart rate to drop during the night. And this will mean you will have less quality sleep and wake up feeling less rested. The third heart rate pattern that you could see is a hill, meaning your heart rate, you go to sleep and it goes up and then it goes down and then it goes up again. So that basically means either you're not following your body's circadian rhythm or you're too exhausted and you need to take care of your body because you are, just experiencing high stress levels for the day, or you are too tired for bed. So the heart rate pattern alone can tell us so much about your recovery. And when I talk on this podcast all the time about waking up and feeling refreshed and feeling alert and like you just want to take on the day with your energy, a lot of it does have to do with the pattern of your heart rate at night. And this is one of the amazing things that you can learn from having data like this. So I have a really interesting example of this actually. So on Wednesday nights, I do still see a very, very small amount of clients in person. I say 90% of the clients I see are online because I have clients everywhere in the world right now, from Europe to Hungary to Africa to all over the States to all over Canada right now. So I see most people online, but I see 4 clients still on Wednesday nights, and I am with them until 8 p.m. So what this means is I usually get home at 8:30, but on any other given day, honestly, I'm usually sleeping around 8:45 or 9. So on these nights that I get home at 8:30, I always have terrible sleeps on Wednesday night. And that is because when I get home after seeing so many clients, I'm hungry and I want to eat. But the problem is I'm eating so close to my bedtime that I can see with this heart rate pattern that I get that massive downward slope. My metabolism is working overtime to digest that food instead of focusing on recovering my brain and my body through sleep. So I always wake up on Thursday feeling a little less efficient than I want to be. But the nice thing about that is it actually lets me plan my work effectively. So I know on Thursday mornings, I don't put anything that needs a lot of, cognitive input, so to speak. So I will do things like I'll make some social media posts or answer emails. I will do a lot of light work during that time because I know the state my brain is going to be in. The other interesting thing about heart rate is that point at which your resting heart rate at night reaches its lowest point has a huge impact on how refreshed you feel the next day. So not only the shape of the curve of your graph, but how long it takes your body's heart rate to stabilize and reach its lowest. So if you are reaching, your lowest heart rate a couple hours into your sleep, you're probably going to wake up feeling pretty darn good in the morning and feel pretty refreshed. But if you're reaching your minimum heart rate, an hour or 2 before you wake up, that meant it took that long for your heart rate to get low and stabilize and start your recovery. So you're going to feel exhausted in the morning. These things are so important to look at. There is so much more that goes into our data than just steps per day and, did you eat whole foods and did you sleep long enough? These are all things I look at with my clients because my job is to create high-performing CEO brains so that they can run massive companies and take care of all of their team and set a great example. So I want to make sure that they are in peak performance so that I know they can show up and feel the way they want to feel in their business. There are also a ton of other, activity things that I track that I want to get into, but honestly, this episode would go on so long if I talked about all of them. So the last one that I really want to talk to you guys about, and it is my favorite reason for using the Oura Ring that Fitbit does not have, is the HRV. This might be a new term to you, but HRV basically stands for heart rate variability. And what it measures is the amount of variation in time between each heartbeat. So for example, if you have a heartbeat that has, X number of milliseconds between it and the next one has Y, and it's looking at, are those times the same? Are they different? How much space is between every single heartbeat we have? Now, this factor of HRV is controlled by our autonomic nervous system. This is not something you can control. This is something that automatically happens, hence the name autonomic nervous system. Now, the autonomic nervous system divides into two branches. You have the parasympathetic branch. I'm going to say that again, parasympathetic. It is responsible for resting and digesting and, just calm and relax. And this we need because it allows us to recover. The other branch of the autonomic nervous system is the sympathetic nervous system. This is responsible for fight, flight, stress, cortisol, go, 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 go. What basically happens is while you are resting and digesting, meaning your body is in a parasympathetic state, the amount of space between each heart rate, the amount of time between each heartbeat, changes. So you might have something that sounds like this. Beep, 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 beep. So it's inconsistent in how much time is between each beat. I hope that makes sense. When your body is in fight or flight, or you are stressed, and that can even be stress at work, stress because a client said something, stress because you have a deadline come up, stress because you're moving, and your heartbeat will become very regular, meaning the time between each beat gets very similar. The purpose of this is because when we are in danger, if we think back to caveman days, when we were in danger, the heart's job is to pump blood fast, effectively, and regularly so that it gets to our muscles so we can run and escape the predator. So it might sound something like this. Boop, 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 boop. Super regular. Now, this allows us to measure the stress on the body. So if we have high heart rate variability or high HRV, that means there is a large variation in the time between heartbeats. This is a good thing. A low HRV, a low score, means that there is low variability between your heartbeats. And this indicates that the body is under stress. So you can get a general sense of your HRV if you feel your pulse on your wrist. So if you take your pointer finger and your middle finger, not your thumb because it has a pulse of its own, and you touch the side of your wrist by your thumb and you feel for your heartbeat, and you take a couple deep breaths in and out. But maybe don't do this if you're driving, and maybe do it somewhere really quiet. Maybe while you're not listening to me in your ears. So maybe you can pause me or, just do this after. But when you exhale, the interval between your beats actually gets longer because your heart rate slows down while you're exhaling. When you're inhaling, the time between your heartbeats gets shorter. This is so interesting to actually feel firsthand, and this is what the Oura Ring specifically measures. Now, your HRV can be influenced by a ton of factors. It can be influenced by alcohol, hydration, if there's inflammation in your body, if you had a really hard workout lately, what your hormones are, if you're stressed out, not only physically in your body, but if your brain or you're emotionally stressed out, your recovery, your mood, so many things. So why do I love this variable? I love using this with my clients because it is a giant indicator of how our body is responding to the changes we make. For example, if we remove blue light 60 minutes before bed, we're not only looking for changes in our sleep quality, but is the stress in our body going down while we sleep? This is such a good indicator because if I said HRV or heart rate variability is an indicator of stress and inflammation and recovery, we want to use this variable to determine if what we are doing is working or not. So for example, if you did too much, if you were exercising way too much, too consistently, your HRV might drop. If you're eating too late at night or a lot of processed food or too much food or you're too little food, your HRV score might drop. But a drop isn't always bad. So last week, I actually had a really hard workout on Tuesday. And it's the kind of workout where you wake up and your legs are like, you're just like, oh my gosh, That's intense. I am so sore. And it was my legs. I could barely even get up or sit down. And I was like, oops, I think I pushed it too hard. And this was on a Tuesday, and my legs were super sore until Friday. So on Tuesday, when I woke up, my HRV score was an 84. I did the workout. I woke up on Wednesday and was like, oh my God, I'm sore. My HRV score had dropped to 68. Remember, a drop means more stress, more inflammation. By Thursday, my score had actually dropped to 53. So we're seeing an 31-point drop. That is a significant swing in HRV. That tells me that my body is under a lot of stress. By Friday, it went back up to 70. And by Saturday, when my legs were feeling good again, my score was up to 92. So look at that swing. That shows me that my body's under a lot of inflammation. It went from 84 to 68 to 53 to 70 to 92. 92 tells me my body's recovered. Big drops like that tell me my body's under stress. Like I said, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it clues me into the fact that my workout may have been too much, or I'm still recovering, so take it easy. On those days where my HRV was down at 68 and 53, that is a huge indicator not to go hammer another hard workout out. So actually what I went and did was Thursday, to keep moving, I went for a short walk. I really focused on my sleep and my nutrition those days to help with my recovery. Another really good example is when I did my no sugar, no flour challenge, just ended like a week ago, my HRV jumped up and actually increased a lot while I took out those processed foods. I know I've even seen from like my clients that if they have a week where it was like a long weekend and they had a lot of alcohol and processed food, they will see massive HRV drops for the following days while their body's recovering, usually from, lack of sleep, alcohol, and all of that kind of stuff. Or, if they're doing a really big launch in their business, they'll get another big HRV drop, or they're overworking, because these are all mental stressors, and mental stressors activate our sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight, and make our heart beat a little more regularly. So when I work with my clients, the goal is to see a steady, consistent increase in HRV or heart rate variability, because it measures stress and therefore inflammation on the body. And that's what I do with my clients. I decrease inflammation and stress so that they can perform and have, clear thinking and sharp focus and the energy they need. And this variable particularly, I've been watching very closely for me as I'm going through this process of packing out my house and selling and moving and everything like that, because it is a huge stress on me mentally to move. It's one of the biggest stressors. I think getting a new job, a divorce, a death, and a move. I think those are like in the top 5 or 6 most stressful events you can go through. And I do notice my HRV is sitting a little lower than normal. So what that tells me is I need to be very conscious of my food, my sleep, my recovery, taking time to, do a cognitive load detox. If you don't know what that is, check out episode 20. And I need to make sure that I'm checking in with myself and taking care of myself while I'm going through this temporary process. So I do want to make sure that I touch on something that I think is not talked about, and it's the dark side of the quantified self, or the dark side of biohacking. It gets really easy to start relying on this data to tell you how you feel instead of deciding for yourself. So how I see this show up for clients is they'll be like, yeah, I woke up feeling really good, but then I looked at my sleep score and it wasn't very good. And so I don't know, I guess it's not as good as I thought. And they start stressing out about it. Or for example, they'll wake up feeling tired, but they'll have, good results on their data and it won't match. And then they're like, well, I should be feeling better. What's wrong with me? And instead of waking up in the morning and saying, how do I feel right now? Do I feel good? Do I feel energized? Do I feel present and clear and focused? Or are they looking at their, data on their phone and letting that dictate how they're feeling? Oh, it only says I got 7 hours of sleep today. I'm probably going to feel tired today. And then they go throughout their day feeling tired. So that is something that I think is really important to address, and watch if you're doing that. So if you find that you are using your tracker to tell you how to feel every day, I want you to really start spending a moment in the morning or before you look at your data and deciding intentionally how you feel. How's your alertness? How's your cognition? How is your energy? How's your clarity? All kinds of things like that before you start looking at your device. The other problem that I see with tracking your data like this is the idea of perfection versus real life. We often look to this data and expect that isn't the goal to have 100% on an activity score and 100% on our sleep score and 100% on our recovery. Sure, but is that really a life? Like, if all you're doing is focusing on your recovery, we also need to take into fact that, my really hard workout tanked my recovery score. Does that mean something is wrong? No. If I don't hit 7 hours and 45 minutes of sleep every single night, am I doing something wrong? No, because as entrepreneurs, we are, in live businesses. There are launches that will keep us up later. There are deadlines that we will have to meet. For example, I just had an article request come into my inbox this morning. It's Friday when I'm recording this right now, and I have my whole day planned, and it's the weekend, and they want this article completed by Monday at 9 if I want to make publication. And I'm like, yes, I do. I would love that opportunity. So this is going to be, something that might push me outside of my work time, and that might affect my HRV, or if I have to do it at night, it might affect my sleep score. This is just called real life. I am not living for a score. I am not living to get all check marks. There are going to be ebbs and flows in my data, but my goal is that the data is keeping me accountable and that I am using it to determine overall how I want to live my life and how I want to treat my brain and my body. Yeah, if I'm having scores every day that are low, that's something I want to look at. But if my scores are generally, I'm proud of them, they're good, they're a reflection of the effort that I'm putting in, and I have one day that's a bit wacky, that's okay. It's real life. So I really want to emphasize how much you stay objective in this and don't get caught up in that whole dark side of tracking where it becomes an obsessive focus. So watch for that early on if this is just what you're starting, and really start to, take life in as a holistic whole, meaning are you enjoying your life and also taking care of your brain at the same time? So this has been a lengthy episode. I had a lot to say, and I'm going to tell you, I already cut out a little part of this because I knew this was going to go on too long, but this is a topic that I'm obsessed with. Obsessed. It is so interesting. It is so fascinating. And it is why my clients get results. And it is how I help build pretty much bulletproof entrepreneurs with really high performance brains, that they are clear and sharp and focused. So if all of this is fascinating to you, but you're like, I don't have time to look at all that stuff, I need someone else to look at that stuff, or maybe you like it, but you don't know how to make sense of it, this is where I come in. And I would love to invite you to apply for a consultation for my one-on-one program called Becoming Limitless. So I basically help you find out where your energy is leaking and where we can streamline your business by streamlining your energy. Because let's be real, if it's taking you 40 hours per week to run a business that could only take 25, that's exactly what happened to me. I was working 40 hours a week, and when I started being efficient, it's only 25. So I cut 15 hours off of my business to be just as effective. Wouldn't you want to figure out how to do that? I would love to invite you to apply for a consultation with me. And I'm going to leave the link in the description to fill out the application. And honestly, the consultation is one of my favorite parts, because after you fill out that application, I'm going to invite you to a consultation call, and we are going to spend an entire hour talking about you and your business and your health. And it's time, I want to dedicate this time just to you. And I want to focus on seeing why you are struggling with brain fog every day, or maybe why you're having trouble sticking to eating real, whole food consistently. Your biggest concerns, they're going to have my undivided attention and my expert eyes, because I've done this more than a couple times, and I'm going to be listening to you very closely and without judgment. And by the end of that hour, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to explain to you hey, this is why you're feeling this way. This is why you're feeling drained. This totally makes sense. Did you notice you were doing this? And I'm going to share a super simple step-by-step plan on how I can help you feel more energy and more focus while you work. Think of it as an hour to really deconstruct and think about why you feel the way you do. And at the end, the answers to why that is happening are going to be very clear. And my very favorite part, oh my God, is showing people their problem in a way they have never been able to see it before. or seeing their thinking and why they're making these decisions in a way that they couldn't, understand before I pointed it out to them. And that aha moment on their face when they realize, like, that's my problem. And there's a solution. And that's what I help with, like that I have that solution that I can help you with. But to have that experience, you first need to apply for a consultation call. So like I said, the link is in my bio. And I cannot wait to see your name in my inbox because I'd love to meet you and talk about what's going on and, share why I can help you and why we would be an amazing fit to work together. So I'm going to wrap up this episode. Thank you so much for your time today and, really exploring this idea of the quantified self. If you love this episode, share it with me on social media. Do a screenshot and tag me in it. I love resharing those on my story and also getting to know who's listening to the podcast. And I mean, if you really love the show, if you could head to iTunes and leave me a review. Basically, what happens if you don't know how the algorithms work, when you leave a review, it basically shares my podcast with other people just like you and helps get the word out so that, we can continue building our community. We can help creating a world of sustainable entrepreneurship and optimized brains. So I would appreciate that. But beyond that, thank you so much for every week taking this time to invest in your brain and your health. I appreciate you. I thank you. And pop into my inbox on Instagram at Tanessa Shears. Say hi. I'd love to meet you and talk to you. But otherwise, the usual. Have a beautiful week, and I will talk to you next week. Bye. Ready to begin each day feeling energized and focused? I'd love to work with you one-on-one. In my Becoming Limitless program, you're going to learn how to optimize your brain and body with science and biohacking so you can be highly productive and grow your business faster. Join me over at TanessaShears.com/work with me. I'll see you there.